You've often spoken about marrying data with creativity. I think that's something I picked up. Is that a love marriage or an arranged one?
It is a love marriage, but it has been arranged now. That's how it is. And why I say that is I feel very strongly that till your left brain and your right brain, don't work together. And a lot of people will say, why is that? Till you don't use data and creativity together, they're both, standalone doesn't help anybody, right? So I typically say this, that data will tell you where to go. Creativity will tell you how to pull on the heartstrings and reach there.
3 words that struck out when I was going through your LinkedIn profile and your posts: empowerment, clarity, accountability. If that's your leadership mantra, which of those are the hardest to practice?
There is so much chaos all the time when you're in any industry, but especially in fintech, because regulations, etc., everything is changing. So I think having clarity in the midst of the chaos is something which is very difficult, because there are times when you're completely, at your wits and you're like unnerved, this is ready, and then there is something which is, there's a regulation. And regulations keep us, I completely believe that regulations, compliance, etc., they keep us, in our guardrails, and that really forms the backbone of the fintech. But there are changes which happen every day. So I think to really have your sanity and have your clarity amidst the chaos is something which is something which is really important. And then I think empowering also, it comes with your experience, that you feel that, okay, fine, it's absolutely okay to let everybody put in their ideas and empower your people. It's absolutely okay to, fail fast and recover quickly.
The one app you will check every morning.
First thing, I check news, I check TOI, then I go to Instagram, then I go to LinkedIn, and then I think that's my order.
What's your CXO superpower, your kryptonite?
I think I have clarity in a lot of chaos that I deal with. I think that's my superpower, and I can streamline. I mean, like I said, I've learned it over the years. I don't mostly lose my cool. I try and navigate and fix it.
If your career was a TED Talk, what would it be titled?
Nothing is impossible. Never say no.
One thing you wish more leaders said out loud in meeting rooms and boardrooms.
We don't need so many meetings. This could have been a call. This could have just happened over a phone call.
Welcome to CXO Connect, where we speak to the leaders reshaping India's digital future. Our guest today is Shilpi Kapoor, a marketing powerhouse with over 2 decades of experience across fintech, telecom, automotive, and consumer brands. From launching the Renault Kwid to scaling Airtel Payments Bank to over 100 million users, she has consistently married creativity with data, purpose with performance. Currently, the Chief Marketing Officer at Airtel Payments Bank, Shilpi embodies the CXO of tomorrow: insightful, empathetic, and always one step ahead of the curve. Shilpi, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we dive deeper, can you explain for our audience what exactly is a payments bank and how is it different from a traditional bank?
Sure. So first of all, I think very excited, pleasure to be here with you, Prasad. I think it's a great opportunity. So I'll explain. I think first of all, Payments Bank is very new to India, right? It's a very nuanced payment bank model. And why the Payments Bank came into being was to basically provide financial inclusion and to get a lot of dignity to the last mile, right? So that was the key theme why this was launched. And how this is different, why? Because one is, of course, from a safety standpoint, you can only put about 2 lakh rupees into this account. And the other is because of the bunch of safety features. So the other part here is that it is nuanced also because we are targeting both ends of the spectrum. So a payments bank also targets the urban sophisticated customer like you and me, and also is the first bank account for somebody who's in a tier 5, tier 6 city who's never had a bank account. And now with the payments bank model, they can open a bank account with their Aadhaar card, right? Which can take just a few minutes. And then it really helps you to get all the government subsidies, etc. So this is really based to connect the last mile, to provide financial inclusion and to get more and more people into the fold of having financial independence.
So you can do whatever on a payments bank what you could have done with a traditional bank account, or are there some significant differences?
So you can practically do everything that you can do with a normal bank except taking a loan, because payments bank aren't allowed to lend as of now. But you can do practically everything. The other good part and what differentiates, the payments bank from the regular banks is, a regular bank, it's a stipulated time. You have to wait in queues. There's a lot of documentation, all of that. And a lot of people in our country are still not very evolved or literate to be able to do all the documentation. So it makes banking seamless, almost at your doorstep, right? So you can go to something what we call is a banking correspondent, which can be your nearest retailer, which is a banking point, and he will help you. It's an assisted thing. He will help you in opening a bank account, right? So it's seamless. It's not time bound as well. Like branches operate from 9 to 1. They have a 1.5 hour lunch break, and then they get back again, and then 5 o'clock they close down. Here, what the payments bank does is fantastic, that whatever time of the day or late evening you're there, you want money or you want to transfer money, just go to your nearest banking correspondent and send money or receive money. So that just really makes it extremely convenient.
The other thing I sort of noticed was that you've worked across industries.
Yeah.
From Coca-Cola to Renault, Amex, Airtel, add in if any I've missed. But what's the one sort of marketing truth that applies to all these products?
First of all, I think I've been very fortunate to be able to work across, things like unconventional, starting from alcobev, cigarettes, automobiles, and banking. I think there is one thing which binds all of these companies, which is everything that a marketer does is based into consumer inciting. And I think if you base your marketing on what you can solve than just trying to sell something, irrespective of what category. I mean, right across alcobev as well, or, cars. Instead of trying to say, hey, I have this product, why don't you take it? If we understand better that there is a consumer problem, I am going to be able to solve it. And I think that just builds a fantastic customer connect, and that lasts much longer than, one spurt of a big ATL campaign or whatever.
And at Airtel Payments Bank, your current role, you've scaled this product to 100 million plus users. What do you do when... So 100 million is a great level, but what do you do differently in your next step? How do you solve for getting 1 billion consumers on board?
So I'll tell you, like I said, India is a very diverse country. It's almost like a mosaic. What works in Delhi will not work 100 plus kilometers from here, right? Mm-hmm. And also, like I said in the beginning, we are targeting both ends of the spectrum. So I think for us, what was the main thing and what has been, what will be really the stepping stone and what will really make the next billion for us is the purpose with which you are solving problems for the customer, right? Here, I'll give you an example. So when I speak about my deep rural, so somebody, say 2 years back, who did not have a bank account today, let's take an example, Priya in, say, a village near Rajasthan, never had a bank account, didn't know what banking looks like, because for her, going to a bank would mean losing the full day's wage, would also mean not, with coming back with cash, which was, really like a security threat, etc., and not receiving the government subsidy. What has happened now? We've been able to open her bank account. She can real-time scan QRs, make payments. She can receive the government DBT subsidy, which is coming for a bunch of other things which are happening digitally, right? So that customer has evolved. Now, this person is coming to the financial fold, right? They know about banking. Now, my thing would be to how do I get this customer to really interact more with me, right? Which is what we call the lifetime value of the customer. How do you, now that you've gotten them into the fold, how do you tell them more things? How do you tell them to save? How do you tell them about saving instruments? How do you tell them about, more and more things which can empower them? How can you take a small micro loan? How can you do all of that, right? So those things really help us. And on the other side, which is the urban side, right? Which is where we're targeting the urban customer. There again, I'm trying to solve a very peculiar problem. Now here I tell you that we've positioned ourselves as a safe second account, right? Which is peculiar. Why? Because we're calling ourselves second, right?
It's like almost saying the mobile is a second screen to a television. I mean, that used to be the media moniker about 5-7 years ago.
So here the second means that I know that I will not be your first account, because everybody has bank accounts in nationalized banks. You have traditional
bank
banks.
accounts. Yeah.
And because of the payments bank model, that there is a limit of 2 lakhs, there is only as much exposure. Now, basis a lot of consumer research, we work with Nelson, we work with a lot of research agencies. A lot of people said, I don't feel safe to bank digitally. While everything is happening digitally today, I don't feel safe when I click on a link. I don't know whether I'm clicking on the right link. I don't know what I'm doing. So we expose them to our features, which are very unique in the market and which are actually industry first, which is something like a fraud alarm, right? So these features, actually 77% of the consumers said, I am looking for a safe second account, which will be my account for doing daily transactions, right? Your QCOM, your e-com transactions, paying a bill, and you can set a limit. So a typical customer would say, I do about 100 transactions a month, right? I want to just put 20 to 25,000 rupees in that account, and it is different from a wallet, right? Because a wallet you'll have to keep loading money, but here this is a bank account. You want your exposure to be 20,000, 25,000, 30,000. That is your exposure, and that's it.
And you can go up to 2
Yeah,
lakhs,
you
which
can
is
go
the
up to 2
limit.
lakhs, which is what you want to do with it. And then, of course, this is a bunch of safety features with it. So what will, really give us that leap in numbers or more acquisitions is very clear purpose. I am providing safe banking and I am providing convenience to the last mile. So I think those are the two things which will form really, the pillars for the next billion that will come in.
You were talking about these category first features.
Yeah.
Walk us through some more examples and what does it actually take, not just to build a category first feature, but actually to take it to your consumer and make her really understand why this is solving a problem for her.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, consumer inciting and understanding what is the problem that is there. Okay, so this again, with two examples, consumer first features. One is, of course, that you can open your account just through CKYC, right? That was a problem. When we initially had this, we launched our bank account, there were a lot of customer issues, etc., etc. So how did we try to solve it? So, okay, you should have your Aadhaar, you should have your PAN card, you open your phone, convenience of your wherever you're sitting, office, in-car, en route, whatever. The CKYC journey, you open your phone, you download the Thanks app, you go into the open account, and within a minute, your account is open, right? So that was one thing that we really solved for, which is understanding that.
And if you're an Airtel consumer, it's faster still because all your data is preloaded.
Absolutely. So this you have to, but we, of course, because the telecom data and the RBI or the banking data is completely separate. So the data needs to be uploaded fresh.
Okay. Yeah.
You can't,
So
there's
your
no
verification has to be done.
There is no linkage that you can do. But that is, and then we, really tested this a lot, that is it making it convenient? Are you want to open a bank account, which is, where you can open your account in less than a minute? Is it convenient? Especially for, how we're seeing in India, very lot of entrepreneurs, right? There's this entrepreneurship wave. There are also women who are running these cloud kitchens. They want to get, payment through UPI, etc. They don't have a bank account. And they don't want to have a joint account as well. They want to have an individual account. They don't want to get into a hassle of going into a bank, doing the whole document.
They just want to receive UPI payments for the small business that they're doing.
Yeah, so it becomes like a delight for them, right? You're sitting at the convenience of your home. You don't have to go to the bank branch, wait for the documentation, getting the welcome kit and the works. You go into the Thanks app, you download it, you open your account, and voila, like that after 20 minutes, you can start receiving, money for whatever you're selling, right? So it is really making it very, very frictionless, empowering a lot of people. Young entrepreneurs, women. I think that's, a lot of women these days, almost 40% of the accounts are being opened by women for us right now, which is great. Like it talks a different story, how you're really empowering one full, set of people who were really feeling left out of this whole financial space, right? So I think that's one. The second is this, the new product that I was talking about is fraud alarm.
Fraud alarm, right.
So fraud alarm is a great feature, right? What I'll tell you is that this is again rooted in a lot of research that whenever somebody feels that some money is left your account, unintentionally, you don't know, or you've clicked on a wrong link, or you've given an OTP, typical scenarios, right? What do? People panic, right? You pick up the phone, you call the call center, you don't know the number. By the time you enter 2-3 tries, this pin, that pin, the transactions are happening by the second, right? This is a real life scenario. It's not like, we said, what is it that we can do from a tech standpoint? Because at the heart of the digital bank is the technology stack, right? How is it that I can simplify? So this product, Fraud Alarm, is a peculiar in nature. As soon as you realize that money has left your account without your, putting in the PIN, or you've clicked on, you just need to slide this button, which is the fraud alarm. All your transactions will get frozen. No bank, no money will leave your account. Our risk teams will be alerted, and all the other procedures will happen in parallel. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to pick up the phone to call anybody.
And all this feature, for example, fraud alarm, very very nice and interesting feature. How do these ideas come to life? All of it bases your consumer surveys and the data that you receive, or is there a eureka moment when you're brainstorming to say, hey, let's build a fraud alarm, and then you go and validate that idea through research? How does that work?
So I wouldn't say like it doesn't happen in parts, right? It happens all parallel. So there's a lot of consumer researching, which is an always on thing that we do. We keep testing our UI, UX, we keep testing our product,
Sure.
etc. And then, during those discussions, there is always that, that threat which people feel that, hey, I know I'm opening an account with you, great, whatever. But what is that? What is it that differentiates you from others? Right? We say that we used to, our claim is that obviously we're payments bank. I told you, you can put up to 2 lakh rupees, you can set limits, etc. But that whole thing, that what is it that I can now do to really, make sure that my customer is feeling really safe doing any transaction with me. When I take the claim and say, I'm your safe second account, no bank will say they're not safe, right? Obviously, money has to be safe.
Banks are supposed to be
Banks will never say that
correct.
they
Banks are supposed to be safe.
Yeah, that's what they're supposed to be. But when I'm taking a claim of saying that I'm your safe second account, what is it that is going to differentiate me? So after a lot of research, back and forth, the product team tested a lot of other features as well. But then I think this is something when we tested, we said this is safety in terms of rating, safety, convenience. So, so safety came before convenience. They said, okay, fine.
All right.
I'm ready to, wait a bit for convenience, but safety is something which is number one on my list. When I'm doing banking, digital banking especially, I want to be sure what I'm doing, and I'm doing it with the bank which is backing me for anything that goes wrong. There's a fraud alarm, right? So that's what it is.
But tell me, how do you, and this is something that has always intrigued me, when we use data, and we at times internet use a lot of data to personalize our content offerings, for example. Where do you stop? What's that line where personalization is truly useful before it starts getting creepy?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the challenge, right? How do you navigate that landscape?
Sure. So I think, very valid question. Today, when we are bombarded with each and everything, which is like hyper personalized, I may or may not need it, right? I'm just generally scrolling for something, and then you send me like 1,000 options and all of that. That gets creepy, right?
Like I always worry if my phone is listening to me. It's almost to that level creepy sometimes, right?
Absolutely. So I think where we've kind of drawn our filter is, as long as I am just benefiting and not intrusive, right? So there are a bunch of filters that we have data which will separate, our customers basis various cohorts, which is, so there's a power user with somebody who's doing 200 transactions a month. So there's a certain set of, prompts or nudges that I want to give this customer. There are a certain set of nudges which I want to give somebody who's a power light user, who doesn't want so much interference around, okay, buy this ticket, buy this, buy that. No. As long as, and we have these filters internally that, okay, in a day, you will only send X number of notifications. Mm-hmm. A customer only when, we have these journeys as well. So if somebody has been onboarded, we have this term for them. We call it baby care. Like for the first 30, 60, 90, we will send you communication on WhatsApp. We will send you an emailer. We will tell you how the bank works. What are the things that you can do with us? And then basis your engagement, what is it that you are interested in? We will start customizing our communication and, then sending it to you. Then just saying, hey, okay, take this. This is my, you do DigiGold with me, you do take an insurance, you haven't taken this. No. There are cohorts, basis customer behavior, basis customer engagement. What is it that you have interacted with in the last 30 days? Basis that we customize our communication and we put filters.
But baby care is same for everyone. Like for the first 30 days, are you treating everybody with thin gloves?
Yes, absolutely. We are actually wanting to educate. So, like I said, no, everybody is, anybody who's my customer is not somebody who's checking emails, right? He doesn't know how to read or write. There can be customers who just come in,
Yes.
right? So, then there are these how to videos, which are there on YouTube, which will be, you'll be sent a link, which will be in vernacular language saying, you know, मैं
And-
अपना payment bank account कैसे खोलूं types, right?
So you're educating your consumer
Yes.
to say, आप मेरा ऐप ऐसे यूज कीजिए.
Exactly.
Something to that
Yes,
effect.
yes.
You're training people to use the app better.
And we're very conscious as an organization to ensure that we are not becoming, we are not spamming the customer, because our customers come to us for a purpose, right? I'm not here to just spam them, take this, take that. No. Basis your behavior, basis the cohort that you fall in, basis the transactions, because obviously you're banking with us, there will be your transaction history. Basis this transaction history, you will be shown something on the app, there will be nudges, there'll be customized SMSs or WhatsApps or emails which will be sent to you. So that's how it is.
And you sort of glean the cohorts basis data insights, I'm assuming. After you've sort of baby cared for your
Yeah.
consumer, you've literally then put him or her in some cohort, and
Yeah.
that's how you're operating, right?
And they are interoperable, right? For say maybe the first 3 months, you've got to know a bunch of things, and then only know you're not just banking with me now. You've taken, say, my NCMC card, which is the transit card that we have. Now, if you've taken the NCMC card, your engagement will be far high. You will be using the NCMC card on a daily basis at a metro. Then I can tell you more around that. How can you check your balance, etc. So you can at one point of time become a power user, or maybe after 30-60 days you can become a power light user, and then obviously all of this is very dynamic, so it'll keep moving.
You've often spoken about marrying data with creativity. I think that's something I picked up. Is that a love marriage or an arranged one?
It is a love marriage, but it has been arranged now. That's how it is. And why I say that is I feel very strongly that till your left brain and your right brain, don't work together. And a lot of people will say, why is that? Till you don't use data and creativity together, they're both, standalone doesn't help anybody, right? So I typically say this, that data will tell you where to go. Creativity will tell you how to pull on the heartstrings and reach there. So that's how it is. If I know this is the data of my customer, but till I don't have the creativity, till I don't, do a fabulous storytelling, I don't solve something, that data is not going to be of any use. And on the flip side, if I just have creativity, have a beautiful storyline, amazing storytelling, and I end it without solving any problem, it doesn't help, right? So for me as a marketer, I think both these things are very integral for anything that you do. You have to get this marriage to work, actually.
Interesting. Now, do you remember a campaign where data insights have perhaps completely flipped your creative approach and made it better?
So here again, so we've, going back to the example that I said, so we were always very confident that convenience followed by safety is the prioritization vector. So all the time we've been speaking about convenience, 24/7, nearest banking point is, 5 minutes walk, all of that. And then there was like inciting, research, etc. What came about was that it is not just convenience. It's okay if I have to walk 10 minutes. It's okay if if I do the transaction after. But from a safety standpoint, my safety rank is first. So we were working on this campaign where we're talking, the whole, campaign that we were creating was about convenience, doorstep bank, 24/7, bunch of features, we are available, vernacular, all of that. That was the thought process, and that's how the films were coming about. And then we got these research reports coming in. We said that no, the customers ranked safety above convenience. And we were like, okay, fine. Now let's just go back to the drawing board. And that's how this whole thing about safety features, about, fraud alarm, sleep mode, and things like that. So I think most important is that these, both these tracks work in parallel, because oftentimes what I have also seen in my personal journey is that there is one track which is working on a very fast pace and the other one's, really moving at a slightly snail pace. And then the marketeers, I would, say that, like, okay, fine, quickly, let's do the research and, let's just kind of get it on. But if the tracks are not running parallelly, we are at a very high risk of really, going out there with a customer communication, which is not solving for what the customer wanted us to solve. Even though we had the whole arsenal to solve it, but we said, no, hey, I thought you like this more. So I think both these tracks have to be initiated in time and have to run parallel to each other. Even if there's, like, in the interim, you can feed in some information that just makes sure that all these things are very, like, structured in a better format.
Are there any KPIs in fintech marketing that you think are overrated, that you secretly think are overrated?
Yeah, I think daily active users, like, that's something which is slightly, like, in fintech, you will also always hear this, how many daily active users, monthly active users. That is slightly overrated. Why? Because I think it's not just about people who come onto the app to transact with you. It is going to be more on the lines of what is the lifetime value of that customer, right? Every day coming onto the app to check a balance is not engagement score, right? That's my view. Because there are a lot of people who will just, even in all fintech,
Yeah, but
just go
in all apps.
you want to check your balance.
Correct.
A lot of people do that 5 times a day. Okay, I've got this money, let me check, all of that. So I think that is something which is a little overrated because those numbers move really drastically, like your DAO and MAO move really drastically. But what is more important is the lifetime value of that customer. How is that customer engaging with you over, in the first 90 days, after 6 months? What are the kind of balances? Is he interacting with your other product portfolios? I think those are things which need to be monitored more carefully than just these two numbers.
Now, with technology evolving so rapidly, and with now all the talk and the work around AI, how do you sort of decide, and in your view, what's hype and what's actually going to help the fintech industry sort of really make the next leap in their consumer journey?
I think first of all, with AI, a lot of things are getting solved, and real time so, right? A lot of customer insighting, the process that I was talking about, feeding in data, getting analysis, how to target, what to do, a lot of these things are getting sorted. But I think what is hyped about is that people, putting the full dependence on, and I was very recently reading an article which said that today, while it's okay, people think, okay, marketing jobs, AI will start doing everything. I think that's a little hype because, like I was mentioning, till you have a human connect, till that emotional storytelling or that heartstring is touched, it will not happen just through AI. There has to be a human touch. There has to be a human at the end of it who will feed in the storytelling, who will feed in the consumer. So like I said, there's a gut feeling also, right? There's data and there is gut, right? I have seen a lot of context. Any marketer would have seen a lot of context, how India has evolved, how things have evolved. AI is here and now. Till you reach that level where you have, completely trained AI to human emotions and all of that, that's a different scenario. But here and now, it's very helpful. Customer communication, translations, vernacular, targeting, all of that is doing fantastic. But at the end of it, I think what is going to always, supersede or come before anything is, the human connect. That's something which is always going to be there. It has to be at the end of the day a marketer who feels that, hey, this is a product, all of this, but how will I take this storytelling? How will my customer feel about this? Will it make him feel that, okay, till a brand has a feeling of warmth or a reality that, hey, this is me, this was my problem, these guys have solved, that can't be done by AI.
I mean, yes, till you sort of identify with the brand, it's going to be really difficult to sell any product. And that's true. So from a marketeer standpoint, and coming back to where you're saying that, hey, we need a marketeer because the AI is not a sentient being as yet. We need something to pull on your heartstrings, and therefore that can be another human being.
Yes.
I can have a machine crunch data. I can have a machine spit out insights. I could maybe have a machine also analyze that to a level that was so far not possible without a human being, or that time has sort of come down. But we still need a human being at the end of that all
Yeah,
that journey
absolutely.
to communicate to another human being.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, even if you say that you feed in all the data, you say this is a scenario, this is the USP I want to communicate. You, to the extent, even get a story for an ad campaign. Now you have to test it with a real customer. You can't ask the AI, hey, will it make the customer weep? Will it make him pick up the phone and call his mom? Will it make him open a bank account? That AI can't tell you, right? That a human being, if you have to test your campaign, at the end of it all, we are speaking to human beings. And we will have to have that, that has to be done by a human being. You have to test your script, ad, anything that you produce. Even you do these, people these days, a lot of brands are picking up AI to do, make these short format films, etc. But they have to be tested with a real customer, right? It cannot be said, okay, hey, how would you feel about it? There wouldn't be a right or wrong answer there, right?
So, what's your take on short format content? You just spoke about a lot of people using AI to do short form content. A lot of people aren't also using AI, but short form content has sort of proliferated our lives. Like there's uh, death scrolling, which I think will soon lead to somebody dying. But be that as it may, what is your take on short form content, especially in serious categories like finance? Is it superficial, or do you think there is some substance to it? Is it snackable? Should people rely on it? What's your take on it?
See, I think at the what is the purpose of, while of course we understand, and that's how the world has evolved. The attention span is really reduced. Like more than 10 seconds, people are not interested. You tell me whatever is your story in 10 seconds, otherwise I'm skipping, right? Now, having said that, if you know that you don't, as a brand, you have a purpose, this is what you want to communicate. Your stories are mostly going to be thematic or problem solving or relatable. And you're not just going to jump on the bandwagon or jump on some trend and, just get people to, consumers to create reels and then, just send it to you and they get a lot of UGC. I don't think that works. What works for fintech as a category, or what works for Airtel Payments Bank per se, even if you see our content which is being created digitally, is again not frivolous, not very slapstick, humorous, etc. It's about, how do you put your safety first. It is going to be around, it can be a little, it can be relatable in a lot of way, and it can have a humorous lens to it. Like we'll get these bunch of influencers who will talk to you about Gurgaon, Delhi travel in rains. Like, oh my God, it's a pain. Those kind of strips. And how is it that you solve? Why don't you travel by metro? Here, this is my NCMC card. Right? So that's, as a brand, you have to take that call that what is it that you want to do? Do you want to just create content for the heck of it and have like 7 stories every day and, 2 new reels? Or do you want to stick to, saying that, okay, this is my purpose. This is the kind of audience I'm engaging in, and I will not do everything and anything that comes my way. And that, I think, that's what creates that, the engagement with the brand. Because to your earlier point, I'm not bombarding you every day. Okay, today this, tomorrow that, there is this reel, let's dance to this. No, that's not my ethos of my brand. My brand stands for a purpose. I'm here to solve your problem, to do financial inclusion, to give you, digital literacy. There might be things around that. And then maybe a theme of the month, like I'll give you an example here. And, just taking from how the content is created, we have taken up this thing which is called It Is Not a Joke. This is a property that we have now. And we typically go live between, 25th March to 1st April, which is April Fool's Day, where we had a lot of these influencers, which are not finance influencers, which are your influencers like Anupama, that lady. Then we had the Bruce Passport. So evolved people who you think, hey, this person knows everything about everything. How can this person be defrauded? So this Not a Joke, hashtag Not a Joke campaign we ran for 2 weeks, where we were talking about financial, knowing the links that you click on. Why is it important for you to segregate your spends and have a separate account? And, and also relatability, say, thinking that, hey, if it can happen to her,
So what I'm hearing you say is more educational versus entertainment. but relatable at the same
Yeah,
time.
that can be it will not be like dry. It will be entertaining. Like I said, that we had this.
But you're not focusing on the entertainment, you're
No.
focusing on the education part of it, or you're focusing on consumer literacy.
Yeah, I'm doing that. I'm not doing the song and
And that you think should hold true for a sector.
Yeah, because
The
I
whole,
think-
whole fintech space should perhaps concentrate more on doing that.
Yeah, see, because if it was another country, it is a different thing. But we as Indians
Uh-huh.
are a very conservative community. For us, money is a serious business. Money is never a joke for Indians. You'll never, we are really, really conservative about our money. I'll give you, there was this very random, test which was done. So we were in a room and we were told that every one of you just take out your wallet, right? And do you have an extra one currency note folded somewhere in the corner? Like you have your main stack of cash, you have your cards, and then there is
You have like
small pocket where you have like a note which is stacked, right? And I kid you not, more than 75% of people had that.
oh.
Like this is what India is, right? Everything is happening digitally. You're scanning QR codes, you're doing this, that, and
I fall in that the other 25% minority. I'll struggle to have cash in my pocket, at least over the last 5 years. But I get you. We are conservative about
not
money.
that okay, take my money and no, we're very like penny drop for for any app. You say okay, hey, I've sent you 1 rupee, you've received it. Okay, great. Now I'll send you the
Now I
money.
send you the money.
So
You are testing.
Yeah,
You like testing. And that's true.
you're very, very conservative about money. We cannot be frivolous.
Our money has to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving from content format to, because you're a marketer, I ask you this. What's your media mix philosophy currently? In 2025, do you still see TV as worth it? Are you still, because I see you're making investments in print, but where do you see the return on your ad spends there? Or are you like scaling up digital all the way and are continuing with some legacy spends? How do you see your media mix? What's your philosophy as a marketer?
Sure. So I'll tell you this again because we are targeting very, very different audience, right? I am neither an FMCG nor a consumer goods. So my customer and the proposition or the positioning that I have for an urban customer is not the positioning or the proposition that I have for the rural customer. So for me, traditional format of advertising, which is TV, is not going to work, right? Because either I talk about safety, my proposition in urban is your safe digital account or your safe second account for daily transactions, right? Which is where we're talking about safety, etc. My positioning or or how we position our brand for the deep rural is that your next door shop is your bank. आपकी पड़ोस की दुकान आपका bank, right? Two very, very different themes.
Yeah, because there the trust is being driven by the Pados Ka Dukaan factor.
Yeah.
Here, of course, you're driving convenience and safety
Exactly.
because of technology.
So what our focus typically is that we want to create awareness and trust, but I don't want to go spend on, just doing TV because my audience is digitally savvy. We have, again, this consumer set, which is somebody who's a daily, digital transactor and somebody who's doing digital transactions is usually not somebody who's sitting in front of the TV most of the time. They're, consuming content digitally. So most of my, more than 50, I would say 60% of my spends are digital, which will be across platforms, which can be across languages, right? I'll not do the tried and tested only English, Hindi formats and YouTube. I will do a lot of vernacular content. I will do all of that. And then on the other side, I will, I will use influencers, this, that. And print is something which I still believe, which is, the old, this thing, is there to drive trust. People feel that if you've done a print ad, because, Airtel Payments Bank, you don't have branches, right? So all banks have branches. This is the place I have to go to. If something
There's a physical
happens.
touch point.
Yeah, there's a physical touch point. There's a grievance.
The physical touch point as a bank branch
Yeah. so
versus your touch point in the neighborhood shop as a person who can assist.
Yeah. So oftentimes what we do is that if there is certain product like we did NCMC, it is going to be not a national campaign, right? It is going to be a Delhi NCR restricted campaign where I'm talking about the National Common Mobility Card for the audience which is in Delhi NCR. That will be a, it can be a
Using the metro.
yeah, full page, half page kind of setup.
Sure.
There you'll have a little bit of, cues from Delhi, the Qutub Minar and things like that. Targeted, again, we'll do a lot of outdoors at the metro station, which is your moment of truth, your point where you're saying, hey, I want a more convenient thing, and this is your all-purpose card. You can do your debit card transactions, you can do your tap and pay, you can do the metro, so you don't need to carry all the cards.
You just walk through the turnstile and you see the
Yes.
ad, so that sort of is solving something
Exactly.
which is on top of your mind.
Yeah,
So that's the physical outdoor, and you're saying print you're using to build trust,
Yes.
credibility.
Yes, because if they feel that, okay, this brand is advertising full page, so they're here to stay. That's the Indian sentiment, right? You do full pages ad once in a while to just re-establish and then obviously to drive awareness for, like I said, NCMC for a particular time, but you will, most of the times we will do it in a, we'll just really restrict ourselves to certain geographies. We will not go all out. Because like I said, it's different for different people and my consumers are completely different.
Three words that struck out when I was going through your LinkedIn profile and your posts: empowerment, clarity, accountability. If that's your leadership mantra, which of those are the hardest to practice?
I think there is so much chaos all the time when you're in any industry, but especially in fintech, because regulations, etc., everything is changing. So I think having clarity in the midst of the chaos is something which is very difficult, because there are times when you're completely, like at your wits and you're like unnerved, this is ready. And then there is something which is, there's a regulation, and regulations keep us, like, I completely believe that regulations, compliance, etc., they keep us, in our guardrails, and that really forms the backbone of the fintech. But there are changes which happen every day. So I think to really have your sanity and have your clarity amidst the chaos is something which is something which is really important. And then I think empowering also, it comes with your experience, that you feel that, okay, fine, it's absolutely okay to let everybody put in their ideas and empower your people. It's absolutely okay to fail fast and recover quickly. I feel, instead of, people saying, okay, I'm going to make this big business case and then test it. And why don't we just quickly empower people, let them come with ideas, and not just the marketing team, right? The
What's
sales.
your first instinct when, let's say, you know that a campaign has tanked or your team has missed some very key target? What's your first instinct?
My first instinct is to really quickly do an RCA and say, dude, where did we go wrong? And how quickly, instead of, saying that, oh my God, this happened, we lost this, that, whatever, what is it that went wrong and how quickly can that be fixed and, taken live again? Instead of, saying that, oh my God, this is what went wrong, and no, instead of that, what went wrong, quickly do an RCA and try and fix it ASAP. And if it's just like something which can be corrected immediately, like, things which happen digitally, there's a running change that you can do.
Sure.
So I think also as a leader, you need to have a little bit of tolerance for errors. I think that's the key thing for empowering people, because if you don't have tolerance for errors, then people will never ever, they will always think inside the box. They will never have the audacity to say, hey, I want to challenge what Airtel Payments Bank has been doing in the last 3 years. I want to do something different. But if there is so much of fear of failure that, hey, if this goes wrong, I might just lose my job or anything like that. So you have to let people know that you are welcome to share your ideas. You have to be accountable for what you're sharing. And obviously, there's a limited exposure that you would like. Each level has the exposure that you can give them or whatever. I think that just really makes it very, very empowering for the teams to come back with ideas.
So is out of the box thinking something you're looking when you're, let's say, hiring somebody on your team, or is something that you're looking for in other digital marketing leaders, people that you work with?
I think more than out of the box thinking, I am really looking at how agile are you? Because it's not always that you want to think of something which is unconventional, right? That is one part. So if you have 5 ideas, maybe 2 or 1 out of that will be out of the box and something which has never been done before, etc. But with the changing environment, with the dynamic environment that we are in because of regulation, compliances, the whole fintech industry moving at such a fast pace, so many things are happening in parallel, and the consumer is really very demanding. Are you agile, or are you just sitting that, hey, I have thought of this brilliant idea, and till this sees the light of the day, I'm not moving? Are you agile to say, okay, fine, this is not working, this is something which has changed, I will retweak or rebuild my campaign and make it live? So I think that is something which I'm looking at in this environment. Are you agile? Are you open to collaboration? Are you really looking at understanding, and you put your ears to the ground and understanding what the consumer is saying, or just sitting and saying, this is how fintech works, this is the ABC, and this is how it goes? No, I think we have to keep evolving. We have to keep learning and unlearning. I think that's a must in today's scenario, and then move ahead with that.
So agility is about high performance. What I hear is that you're looking for agility, you're looking for people who can pivot fast, and therefore you're valuing high performance. At the end of the day, all high performing teams, and here, I've seen the media scape evolve over the 25 years in an equally bizarre manner, and the news business is by definition chaotic, right? We are always responding to a scenario. It's not something of our own creation. We are measured on our response all the time. So how do you, in that kind of a scenario where performance is very critical, how do you build trust? Because at the end of the day, when things are not going right, more than performance, I always think trust comes into focus.
Yeah, of course. I think trust, this is true for, your customers or your internal customers, which is your colleagues or employees. So I think trust is something which they should know that there is someone backing them. That's what I said. Agility is fine, empowerment is fine, but that trust in the organization or with your leader, you should have that kind of trust. And it's both ways. It's not that I trust my colleague, and we never use the term employee, we always say colleague. So I trust my colleague, and the colleague trusts me and trusts the organization that whatever, is happening, I have a safety net, and, my, whatever I suggest or whatever happens, the organization or my leader is there to support me. That safety net, that trust has to be built, and that is true for the customers as well. That the customer should have the trust in the brand, not just from a banking standpoint, but for anything that you use, any category. Anybody who's using a baby care product, right? Something for an infant, you will never go for a new brand which has been launched in the market. Why? You will go for tried and tested brands which have been around, where people will tell you, hey, I've used this, doesn't cause any harm, this and that. The likelihood of people to switch to a brand in that category is very low because they're risk averse. They don't want to try something. Why? Because they have trust. So every life
And that word of mouth trust.
Word of mouth, and mothers trust mothers more, and experience and all that. So I think each category has nuances, right? So having worked across these, even in cars, it's very nuanced. Even today, irrespective. When we speak about digitization, AI, simulation, people taking test drives over simulation, at the end of the day, and this is backed by research, whenever somebody in India buys a car, it is to do with social acceptance. If somebody is buying any brand, any car model, because in India, it is considered a status symbol. It is what you want people on the road to think of you. And when I was in automobile, one of my leaders used to say, in India, what you cannot carry your bank account statement with you, but your car on the road speaks like that. And that's the Indian mindset.
I think that's so true, because
because that's how it is.
That's how it works. Because I remember somebody telling me, because I've always been fascinated by automobiles. Is something that fascinates me, and I've always wondered, whenever a friend is buying a car or something, I always thought dwell too much on what color the car was. And I used to sort of like, I've turned around to close friends and asked them, I said, how does it matter? Because it is, you're sitting inside. There's very little of that color you actually see. And in the smaller cars, you don't even get to see your hood, right?
Yeah,
so
true.
you can't, when you're sitting inside the car, you don't actually, it doesn't matter whether it is like white or silver or blue or red. How does it matter? And I remember one of my closest friends turning around and telling me, he said, मुझे नहीं दिखती है, but दूसरों को तो दिखता है.
Exactly. Exactly.
एंड गाड़ी बाहर से दूसरों को दिखती है, इसलिए आप अपने बारे में क्या कहते हैं उससे फर्क पड़ता है. That's something that stayed with me, to understand that it is not for yourself, but it is how you want others to perceive you, that you dwell on the color of the car.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That people, cars is what you want to showcase. It is about social acceptance. You will always have anybody. You have a trustworthy friends network.
Correct.
You will always say, hey, I want to buy this X vehicle. What's your feedback? It's not about the price point. It is not about the price point. It is going to be, okay, after sales, what do you feel? I mean,
Dealership behavior.
And like how's the look and feel? Is it really like, people are not talking tech specs. They're talking social acceptance, that tomorrow if I come in this car to this friend's house or I'm going on the road, do I look like arrived or do I look like,
Yeah, social acceptance and perhaps ownership experience. I think
absolutely.
Once you've bought a car, if your ownership experience has been good, then you'll sort of stay with the brand.
And it's an extension of your personality, right? It is. Because people in Europe, people change their cars very frequently. And that's, when I was working with Renault. In India, people are with one car for 5 to 9 years minimum. You will not change your car before 7, 8, outer 10 till the government says, okay, now enough. This car doesn't have to be running on the roads. But 10 years, you are going to be driving a vehicle for 10 years. You have to be very, very sure what you're buying into.
And now, we grew up in an India where many of us had cars which were, touching 17, 18, 20 years, right?
Absolutely.
So it used to be a very different, I mean, you could sort of virtually live with one car through your adult life.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Yes.
Yeah, so that's true. That's interesting as a point. Do you remember, and I know one always doesn't like to talk about it, but do you remember anything, any campaign, any failure as such which stung at that point of time, but on hindsight now has helped you sort of build your career, shape the way you think, and led to many more successes?
Yeah, so I can tell you, that is something that is, it's something which happened to us at Renault, right? This is an example, and how you need to really sometimes just not go with the plan, the Gantt charts and stuff like that, and really pivot and, think of something which is very different. So I'll give you this real example. So this was the time when we were launching the Kwid for India. So Renault was launching its first car, the Renault Kwid for India, in India. They usually launch their cars, outside in Europe and all of that. Yeah. And then they launch it in other countries. So this was the launch of the Renault Kwid, the 99% made in India. Now, so obviously cars are test driven, right? People don't buy cars without test driving. And we had taken up these huge mall spaces to put the car on this platform and the full works, right? And it was around Diwali time, because that's when in India a lot of
footfall in the malls is brilliant.
And purchase of cars happens during that time, right? So all set, malls were booked.
In our parlance, festive.
Yeah, festive. Yes, that's the festive. And all the malls, pan-India, because automobiles does not, we don't restrict to a certain geography. Pan-India malls, etc. were booked. And it's all done. And we said, okay, fine, send us the cars. They sent us the cars and we put the cars on the platforms. We got a mail saying that these cars are not test drivable vehicles. That's the line. Okay. And our hearts sank because everything was stitched. We were very on a high, riding on a high, this is great. We've got booked the malls just in time. We've done the works, etc., etc. And we were like, in India, people will not buy a car without test driving the car, right? They will not do it. What do? What we did was we tried to see how we can solve this digitally. There was a lot of stress in the system. We didn't know what to do. We had started our digital campaign, come visit this stall. All the creators were ready. TVC was ready. Everything was ready. We just had to press the button to fire, right? Now we got this email which says, you can't test drive. And we said, okay, what to do now? That's when this technology of AR and VR had just come in. So we worked with, a lot of production houses. We created these virtual reality films where you were sitting in the car and the film was running with this Oculus gear. It was like, okay, there's a bump. And the Hindi narrative, oh ho, aage gadda hai, dhyan se chalana, and things like that. And I kid you not, because of that experience, and it was so new to the country because they were experiencing sitting in the car, they were sitting in the physical car.
Correct. It's like
But the whole thing was through AR, VR. We actually surpassed the bookings that we were thought that we would get through a test drive.
because of the novelty factor.
Novelty factor, but now I can, in hindsight, say, hey, it was this, that. But at that time, there were tempers, there was like, this blame game, let's just pull out from all the malls, etc. So I think whenever in crisis, now I at least think about it that if there is a crisis, there definitely is a solution. It may take an hour, it may take 24 or 48 in a worst case scenario, but it doesn't mean that you have to get triggered and just run into, dousing the fire. There can be some immediate, like things which you can course correct or whatever. But you don't immediately need to rush into it and be like, this has to stop and I have to change it and all of that. No, I think whenever in crisis, you should just step back, think. And I think almost 99% of the times there is always a solution.
My research team has thrown up a lot of interesting stuff. Of course, it's all that you've put out there on LinkedIn. But ideally, most
Okay.
of this is LinkedIn. So bear with us. But you've said somewhere that if you run too fast, the road will end soon. Was there a moment in your career where you've had to slow down? And how did you do it? Walk us through it.
So I'll tell you, at the bank, when I joined in, I was like everybody who comes in new, you want to change everything, you want to make it dynamic.
पूरे घर के बदल डाल.
Exactly. That's what I was about to come to, कि सब कुछ सब नया होना चाहिए. And, we should do a new campaign. Why are we not doing this? Why shouldn't we do PR? Why shouldn't we accelerate on this? So I was like, okay.
Going on 100 miles an hour.
Even more. Like, I was just like super high on steroids and this new energy that I've come from these many industries and this is like a very nice purpose-driven thing. I'm going to change things like this. Till I was told that, okay, sit down. There is this compliance person. There is this legal person. There are these RBI circulars. Anything that goes live or is actioned has to be vetted through these 4-5 people. And this is not a domain where you can just accelerate. Because like I said, I was high on this thing of, consumer inciting. We'll do this in urban. We'll do this. And changing things in a setup which is so dynamic and also so diverse. Like when I think of changing one poster, I can tell you today, after 3.5 years with the bank, I have 5 lakh plus banking points. Right? And it's not everybody is going to put a Hindi poster. Everybody is not putting an English poster. Imagine the scale. And how much time will it take for all these things to change? Right? So I've then realized that, okay, let's take a step back. Let's do things in a phased manner, step by step, understand nuances and go, do all of that. Because it's very easy to say, okay, I want to like change everything and it has to be like all of, everything has to look new and you want to change the positioning, you want to do all of that. But no, I think the thing is that if one is, of course, you're running at such a fast pace, you miss out, like they say, if you're going in a very fast train, you miss out on the scenery. It's exactly the same in marketing. If you go too fast, you miss out on the environment, what is happening, what is the consumer insight, what are the things that you should pick up from competition, what is it where they've tried and failed, you should not take that path. So I think we should take one step at a time and go gradual.
I have been told you don't schedule weekend calls or late meetings.
Yeah.
How late is late and what made you draw those boundaries?
Okay, so I think this is a very interesting thing and this is what I've learned. I would credit this to one of my mentors and she was with me in Amex. So, you know, in India, we have this thing. Most of us, we're always trying to overwork ourselves and saying we don't have time. So, not having time is a then a status symbol. I don't have time. My calendar is blocked. I don't have time to breathe. I didn't have my coffee today. I missed my breakfast. But what is it going to get you to, right? What is it that you're chasing ultimately? And then when I draw this line that I don't want to speak to you on weekends if there is, unless until there's something really critical.
Sure.
And not late night calls because you're already giving me 8 to 9 hours in office. If I can't get my point across in those 8, 9 hours, what am I going to do? Getting into your weekends, spoiling your family life or your hobbies or whatever. And when you're giving me Monday to Friday 8 to 9 hours, and I think that's where if I tell you that, okay, I want this out of you, and that's where you give your maximum because Saturday, Sunday, I can recharge. And if I'm constantly chasing them or whatever, there is not, and they will never come back with fresh ideas. It becomes like a routine that, oh my God, again this call, this call. It doesn't help. I think you should just have very clear timelines and structures with this team. Hey, Monday, this is Monday morning. We do a full thing of what are the things to do during the week, and Friday we do a quick recap. That's it. Unless until there's something which is really on fire, Saturday, Sundays is completely your family time, your time with pursuing your hobbies. Go do your golf, have your coffee, go for your drives, do whatever you want. So that you're recharged and not panicking when you're back to work on Monday and you love coming back and you don't have, like, at least I can say that, and then you can do your research on that. At least I can say that my team would never say that we have Monday morning blues because they've not been, tired out over Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So when work gets overwhelming, and I'm sure it sometimes does, and it must have over such a long career, what's your, like, we all have our ritual go to for reset. Like, what's your go to ritual for reset? What is it that you find yourself doing most often to sort of reset and get out of that mode?
So I think this is a luxury that I've enjoyed because having worked in automobile, I love driving. So I would just, if I'm stressed and I need to recharge, I would, just take my car, put on some very, like my playlist and just go for a long drive without any disturbance, without anybody with me. I would just go for a long drive, right? And then just stop on the way, chill a bit, have a cup of coffee. I think that is something which really, and that gives me like a sense of calm.
That's your space.
Yeah, that's my space. I'm listening to my music and I'm not being driven because it's Delhi, Gurgaon. I am driving my own vehicle. I'm in control. I am like,
I know that.
vibing with the music.
I know that.
and
No,
then-
I still drive my own car. I have not driven more often than not because whatever time, even if I'm stuck in traffic, it's my space. I get that.
Like I call this like my time. I'm doing like my singing and just driving and just like, okay, fine. I don't have to reach anywhere or, follow any timelines or anything. I think that's my recharge. That like really lifts me up. And then just stop by for a nice cup of coffee and calm. And I think that's just amazing.
And again, you've sort of quoted Ariana Huffington on the idea that we all need to unplug. What's the last time you unplugged? Not driving up and down, but generally unplugged. And how did you do it? What did it change? Or what does an unplug do for you? Like, how do you come back after that?
I think I come back recharged, much, I think, with the clarity of thought. Because, like I said, there is so much happening every day, not in just the workspace. You're doing digital. There's so much happening around the world. Things which just sometimes.
What did you do last time to unplug? Like, think of the last time you really unplugged.
Yeah, when I really unplugged, I think I went to this place in Kasoli. And the great part was that was a new place. My friends just opened that place and they don't have Wi-Fi. So my phone wasn't working. So I actually unplugged because people could only reach me through the manager's desk, which was a landline on his cell phone, right? And that's it.
So your phone wasn't working. You did not have any Wi-Fi.
I did not have any Wi-Fi. I couldn't check emails. I couldn't check WhatsApp. I couldn't do my Instagram snacking or doom scrolling, as you would call it. And I was not influenced about what happened in the world, news, this, that, whatever. And trust me, we really underestimate digital detox, but it is heaven. I can say that it is heaven because, I mean, guilty as charged, we are so consumed by checking our phones. I mean, I get astonished when I check the phone app, how many times you picked up your phone. It's crazy. I mean, we're really addicted. So I think it really helps to just unplug and just say, okay, this can wait. Like, let me just put myself in order first, then attend to all of this.
If you teach a non-work skill to your entire team, right? Just one non-work skill, what would you do and why?
A non-work skill, I would say, is just be spontaneous. Be it your travel or be it like, I believe, don't do everything which is formatted. I think one non...
How do you teach somebody spontaneous?
Yeah, you have to tell them. You have like, people, we have extremes, right? There are some people who would plan their full itinerary like to the T.
14:45 we do this.
Exactly.
15:37 we have to go do this.
Yeah, and like not teach. I think it becomes a habit. Like, whenever I take them for team lunches, I never have a calendar blocked with anybody in my team. It can be a Friday, it can be a Monday, it can be a Tuesday, and I will just say, I'll just put it on our Telegram group. Hey, meeting at so and so place for lunch, and that's it. I don't work with this agenda that today I'm going to do this and I'm going to discuss this plan and this plan. I think that just builds the whole fun element. Otherwise, some people are like, okay, now we have to go for this lunch and this and that. Don't make it just be spontaneous. And I think the other life skill teaches you should have one thing which is really your ikigai, which is something that you love to do, and you should really spend 1 hour at least doing that: reading, writing, listening to music, attending a play, watching a movie, listening to a podcast. Just 1 hour in 24 hours for yourself.
So what's that for you? OTT, travel, books. What does that 1 hour for you look like?
For me, that 1 hour is going to be listening to some very nice music, sipping an amazing cup of coffee with hazelnut to the specific, and just lounging, and that's it. Like, no distraction, no nothing, and just doing that. Like, that's it. I don't need any other gadgets, this, that. Like, no, just that. And that really is like, that's like something which makes me really calm. And I don't know, this one, now I'm ready to like do anything. Tell me what to do, where to go. I'm okay.
That's like an instant fix.
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay. This is virtually the last section of what we do here on CXO Connect. From other talk shows, you can call it rapid fire because that's a commonly used moniker. I just like to call it reflections because I don't want it to be super rapid. I just want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind, right? So when the chips are down, data or gut?
Mix of data and gut. Never just data.
You should choose one.
Data with gut. Because I think context setting, like I said, happens with gut. It's just data, you don't know what happened 10 years back and it's not in the public domain. It's not useful. I think data with a mix of gut.
The one app you will check every morning.
First thing I check news, I check TOI, then I go to Instagram, then I go to LinkedIn, and then I think that's my order.
Okay. What's your CXO superpower, your kryptonite?
I think I have clarity in a lot of chaos that I deal with. I think that's my superpower. And I can streamline. I mean, like I said, I've learned it over the years. I don't mostly lose my cool. I try and like navigate and fix it.
If your career was a Bollywood film, what would it be titled?
Okay. Now, that's something I haven't thought about.
I can give you an alternative. If your career was a TED Talk, what would it be titled?
It would be a TED Talk that it would be nothing is impossible. Never say no.
Never say no. That's interesting. One thing you wish more leaders said out loud in meeting rooms and boardrooms.
We don't need so many meetings. This could have been a call. This could have just happened over a phone call.
Yeah, this could have been a one-on-one call instead of a 7-person meeting. I agree. If Airtel Payments Bank had a mascot, what would it be?
Will most definitely be a woman caricature, somebody who's like caregiver and somebody who's trying to solve your problem. I think that kind of
that's the brand imagery that you have in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. One piece of advice you would give to a woman starting her career today?
Don't ever be bowed down by what people say. Go with what your gut tells you. And like I said in the beginning, never underestimate yourself and never say no. And I can say that why, and I know it's a rapid fire, but I would definitely stop here and say this because the industries that I have worked in, right, which is liquor, which is cigarettes, which is automobiles, the first thing that was said to me was, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to go into this industry which is dominated by men and you may or may not be taken seriously? And I said, yes, I want to do this and I want to prove myself time and again. And that's how I've worked in these industries which are purely, even till date, male dominated. You have very few women in liquor. You have even fewer women in automobile. Right? So I think for women starting afresh, just take on whatever comes your way and just don't say no. It's an opportunity. And in a boardroom or in a meeting room, always raise your hand first. Don't say that. And don't be in self-doubt that, hey, I don't think I will be able to. The moment you think that, that's where you lose. Just say you will be able to and you will find a way to do it. And you will 99.9% be able to solve for it.
Is there a quote or line that stayed with you now for many years, decades?
Yeah. The thing which sticks with me is I've not come this far only to come this far. There's a long way to go.
That's nice. And if you could be remembered, and too early for to be remembered or agree, but let's say if you would want to be remembered professionally for one thing, what would it be?
I think professionally, it's not really a legacy that one leaves behind, but I think that whatever marketing or whatever work that I did made a difference to the consumer's life. And even if a bunch of consumers, a set of consumers, and it was purpose driven, it really transformed the way they were living their lives. Be it through banking, be it through empowering women, making them women banking correspondents, engaging with them, whatever it is. But how Shilpi really, led the way with purpose-driven marketing.
Wonderful. And one last thing, because you spoke about legacy, what is harder, rebranding legacy? Because you worked in, I realize, legacy organizations as well as startups which are completely in a different space, right? So what's harder, rebranding a legacy or building trust in a startup?
I think building trust in a startup, because there are a lot of challenges with a startup. And in today's scenario, everything is happening so fast. People are opening or getting into new entrepreneur ideas. They may not work, they fade out or whatever. So building trust, to be able to sustain that trust and to be able to deliver on that trust, I think which is something which is really hard. Like, you can establish trust and it takes a second for the customer to have a bad experience, and just like, the trust takes a nosedive. So I think not just build, but have trust, have moments where the customer, you have to keep building on that. And you have to be rest assured that you have to keep doing that, and not just because now that you're 5 years after the startup, you're 5 years into the business and you're doing well, these are some things which wouldn't matter. It's okay, now everybody trusts me. No. You have to stand true to that claim for as long as the brand is there in the customer's life.
Okay. So on that note of sustainable trust,
Yes.
if I can call it that, Shilpi Kapoor, it's been a pleasure having you with us. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights. And it's been a wonderful, fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing. And I think I went down the memory lane. It's been great, Prasad. Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you.